come on over here for a second and look at the engine. Still has nice black paint on it. It's the 4100. It's fuel injected.
To let people know, and in this heat, and it runs and drives great. The compressor is working. It's not seized up.
There was a time when Cadillac meant everything: power, prestige, and pure American luxury. These were the cars people aspired to own, the kind of machines that made you feel like royalty behind the wheel. But in the early 1980s, that image started to crack. And the reason why? It wasn't a design flaw. It wasn't a marketing mistake. It was something far more damaging: an engine. Cadillac called it the HT4100, a bold, futuristic V8 that promised innovation, fuel efficiency, and high-tech performance. But what they didn't tell customers was that this engine had a secret, a costly one. Because buried beneath the polished chrome and cutting-edge claims was an engineering time bomb, one that would destroy engines, sink reputations, and leave thousands of owners betrayed. Cadillac said it was high-tech, but what they delivered was high-risk.
1970s, the premier luxury car brand in the world, aside from Rolls-Royce and Bentley.
This is the shocking truth about the HT4100 V8, and the lie that almost brought Cadillac to its knees. In the golden age of American motoring, one name stood above all others: Cadillac. Owning one wasn't just about getting from point A to B. No, owning a Cadillac meant you had arrived. It was the pinnacle of American luxury, swagger, and status. When a Cadillac rolled by, people noticed. When one pulled up, doors opened. This wasn't just a car, it was a cultural icon. Presidents were chauffeured in them. Mob bosses trusted them. Movie stars and moguls demanded them. Cadillac wasn't just selling vehicles. They were selling the American dream in steel, leather, and chrome.
Published in 1981, it did not have the HT4100 at all.
In the 1970s, Cadillac's formula was simple: go big. Big bodies, big comfort, and even bigger engines. Like the legendary 500 cubic inch V8 that guzzled gas but made no apologies. Because when you were Cadillac, you didn't have to apologize. You were untouchable. But nothing lasts forever. By the end of that decade, storm clouds were forming. The oil crisis had hit hard. Gas prices soared. The government cracked down on emissions. The public demanded efficiency. And suddenly, Cadillac's kingdom of excess looked like a dinosaur. Gone were the days of endless horsepower and single-digit MPGs. Now, fuel economy ratings mattered. Regulations weren't suggestions. They were law. And Cadillac, the titan of traditional luxury, had to evolve.
Cadillac was quite the innovator with their powertrains back then, offering everything from a
or risk extinction. So the engineers at GM scrambled for answers. Downsizing wasn't optional. It was survival. But Cadillac didn't just want to shrink their engines. They wanted a revolution. A power plant that was smaller, smarter, and forward-thinking. A technological marvel for a new age of driving. This would be Cadillac's answer to modernity. On paper, it was brilliant. And in 1982, they unveiled it, the HT4100 V8. They called it the HT4100, and the HT stood for high technology, a bold name for an even bolder gamble.
Famous Cadillac engine, famous for eating camshafts at 15,000 miles, and they all...
This wasn't just another engine. This was Cadillac's moonshot, the mechanical messiah that was supposed to carry the brand into the future. After all, Cadillac wasn't just downsizing, they were reinventing. Gone were the massive 368 and 425 cubic inch dinosaurs of the past. The HT4100, by comparison, was a featherweight, just 4.1 liters, or 249 cubic inches. A dramatic departure. But Cadillac didn't flinch. They doubled down. This wasn't about brawn anymore. It was about brains. And on paper, it sounded impressive, even revolutionary for 1982. The HT4100 boasted a lightweight aluminum block paired with cast iron heads.
If it didn't work, disconnecting a single wire turned it into a regular V8.
Electronic fuel injection, still cutting edge at the time. Onboard diagnostics, in an era when most mechanics still use stethoscopes. A unique dry-run oiling system with anti-corrosion coatings. And best of all, an earth-shattering 135 horsepower. Wait, 135 horsepower? Cadillac's flagship high-tech engine, meant to carry 4,000-plus pound luxury sedans with grace and authority, made less horsepower than a Honda Civic. But as underwhelming as the performance was, it wasn't the real problem. Because the HT4100's Achilles heel wasn't what it lacked in power, it was what it lacked in durability. What followed wasn't just a reliability issue, it was a mechanical nightmare that would wreck Cadillac's reputation, cost GM millions, and leave a generation of owners betrayed by the badge they once trusted most. And the worst part? Cadillac saw it coming.
It has 1,300 original one-owner miles on it.
It didn't take long for the problems to begin. Almost immediately after the launch, the HT4100 developed a reputation, not for innovation, but for catastrophic failure. Owners complained of knocking, overheating, and oil leaks. Service techs reported blown head gaskets, warped aluminum blocks, and even total engine failure within 40,000 miles. So, what went wrong? Let's break it down. The biggest flaw was one of basic metallurgy. Cadillac had used an aluminum engine block with cast iron heads. Now, on paper, that sounds like a great way to reduce weight. But in reality, these two metals expand and contract at different rates.
The manufacturer doesn't have enough confidence in the quality of what he makes. He doesn't have the right to ask you to buy it.
Which means every time the engine heated up and cooled down, it was basically tearing itself apart. The head gaskets, already a weak point, would fail early and often. Coolant would leak into the oil would sludge, bearings would spin, and the engine would die. Some owners were on their second or even third engine before hitting 100,000 miles. Cadillac's high-tech masterpiece was becoming a high-cost nightmare. Soon, the complaints weren't just anecdotal. Cadillac dealers were overwhelmed with warranty claims. Lawsuits began piling up. Forums and car magazines called the engine a disgrace. In 1984, things got so bad that Cadillac issued a technical service bulletin.
The aluminum block is cracked right here in the cylinder.
See the water jackets? Oh, that's right, they don't have.
Essentially admitting the HT4100 was deeply flawed. They offered partial reimbursements, extended warranties, but the damage was done. For the first time, Cadillac's reputation for quality was in question. Among owners and mechanics, a new joke emerged. HT didn't stand for high technology, it stood for high trouble. The HT4100 became a symbol of everything wrong with 1980s GM engineering. Overly ambitious ideas rushed to market without proper testing. And here's the kicker. Cadillac knew the engine wasn't ready. Internal documents and former engineers later admitted they were under pressure from GM to meet corporate fuel economy targets. Rather than delay the engine, they launched it anyway, hoping customers wouldn't notice. They noticed. Now here's where the story gets even more dramatic.
They did very little modifications to them, but they're basically the same engines.
The HT4100 wasn't just a bad engine, it was a turning point. Because when people bought a Cadillac in the 1980s, they were buying more than a car. They were buying trust, prestige, legacy. But the HT4100 shattered that trust. Suddenly, buyers were looking at Mercedes, Lexus, and even Lincoln. Cadillac's crown was slipping, and it would take decades to earn that trust back. Let's not sugarcoat this. GM made a choice. They could have delayed the HT4100. They could have invested more in development. They could have used all cast iron construction or improved gasket materials. But instead, they rushed a flawed engine into production because corporate average fuel economy, CAFE, fines were looming, and market share was slipping.
With cast iron heads, so that dissimilar metals wasn't a...
The HT4100 wasn't just an engineering failure, it was a business decision. A calculated risk where you, the customer, paid the price. And when engines started failing, and they failed often, GM didn't rush to make things right. There was no sweeping recall, no public apology, no bold move to protect the Cadillac name. Instead, they issued a memo. That's right. As owners dealt with blown head gaskets, warped aluminum blocks, and oiling system failures that destroyed engines from the inside out, GM's official response wasn't to fix the problem. It was to acknowledge it quietly. Behind closed doors, Cadillac engineers knew the HT4100 had serious flaws.
The name of it being high technology only had throttle body injection throughout it.
They had the service bulletins. The warranty claims were flooding in. But rather than face a massive recall and the PR nightmare that would follow, GM chose the path of damage control over customer care. Dealers were instructed to follow carefully worded procedures. Some engines were replaced under warranty, but only if you complained loud enough. For many customers, it was too little, too late. By the time GM responded, the damage was already done. Engines were dying, and faith in Cadillac was dying with them. To the loyal customers who had spent tens of thousands on what they thought was the pinnacle of American luxury, that memo wasn't just insulting, it was betrayal in print. Because when your Cadillac dies at 50,000 miles and the company hands you a carefully worded internal bulletin instead of a fix, that's not just a defect, that's a disgrace.
Outside, away from the porch, talking about the worst engines of all time. So if you're new to
Cadillac tried to reinstate the reputation it had spent decades building. In 1988, they introduced the 4.5-liter version, slightly more durable, with better gaskets and revised internals. By 1991, the engine grew to 4.9-liter and 200 horsepower. But by then, the damage was done. The HT4100's legacy was sealed. In used car lots, Cadillac with HT4100 became a red flag. Mechanics warned customers, resale values plummeted, and the name Cadillac no longer meant what it once did. Here's the cruel irony. The HT4100 was supposed to be Cadillac's savior, their answer to changing times. A sleek, modern, fuel-efficient marvel that would help them compete with the rising tide of European luxury brands like Mercedes and BMW.
A straight car, the body's straight, it's clean, there's really no rust, the top.
It was meant to elevate Cadillac into a new era. Instead, it nearly destroyed it. What was pitched as high technology quickly became a cautionary tale, one of over-promising, under-delivering, and engineering shortcuts that shattered consumer trust. Cadillac, once the gold standard of American luxury, suddenly found itself mocked, doubted, and bleeding credibility. Owners were furious. Dealerships were flooded with complaints. Engines failed. Lawsuits followed. And the damage to Cadillac's reputation couldn't be fixed with a new ad campaign. It would take decades to undo the mess. Only in the 2000s, and with the introduction of advanced engines like the North Star and later the Blackwing V8, did Cadillac begin to claw its way back toward performance respectability.
As you can see, I can put my hand on everything without burning it.
But even then, the scars remained. Because ask any seasoned car enthusiast today, especially those who lived through it, and just whisper the words, HT4100. You won't hear admiration. You won't hear nostalgia. You'll hear laughter, groans, maybe even a horror story or two. Because to them, HT doesn't mean high technology. it means high trouble. And it stands as one of the most infamous blunders in Cadillac's long, complicated history. The story of the Cadillac HT4100 is a cautionary tale. It's what happens when a legendary brand forgets what made it great. When cost-cutting outweighs craftsmanship, when innovation is rushed, and reliability is sacrificed. In the end, Cadillac paid the price, not just in dollars, but in reputation. And for thousands of owners, that price was a broken engine and a broken promise. So the next time you see a pristine 1980s Cadillac, remember, beneath the chrome and leather might be a ticking time bomb. This was the shocking truth about the Cadillac HT4100, a high-tech dream that turned into one of GM's biggest nightmares. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories just like this one. Let us know in the comments if you ever owned an HT4100. Was it trouble-free or a total disaster?